Welcome, Tiger Town Podcast, Saturday, 16th of December. I got so excited I did actually mix up the order of the intro. Welcome, I'm Zac, he's Toby. Over in the corner, I got the camera here. It's all happening. What a week. We've had to do an extra show. Mate, how you going?
Yeah. We were discussing it just before, and we decided, look, there's too much that's happened this week for us not to do an extra show. So, look, I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to discuss it at length, and I guess you being you, you've done your digs and things like that, so you know probably the ins and outs of a lot of the other stuff that maybe some others don't. So, it's really excited to learn what you've uncovered and if it's more than what everyone else is, I guess, sharing. So
Well, look, the big stories this week, if you've been living under a rock or you haven't been following the Tiger Town Podcast Facebook page, obviously we had the news earlier in the week. Justin Pascoe resigned, the entire board completely wiped and replaced with an interim one, with Barry O'Farrell as the interim chairperson. And then you've got, obviously, the interim CEO being Shane Richardson. Now, we'll get to that later in the show, but this morning, which has prompted the bonus Christmas episode here, is obviously the official but unofficial word that Jarome Luai has agreed to terms with the Tigers on a 5-year, $6 million deal from 2025, if you please. Now, there's a few things we need to go through with that, not least of all this 10-day cooling off bits and pieces as to where it all sits. But, mate, first impressions. Jarome Luai, 5 years, $6 million. Thoughts? Did you think we were going to get there? What's the value like?
I did not think we were going to get there. I was adamant he was going to stay at Penrith, especially when they upped it to an extra year. I thought he was definitely going to stay, chase some more rings. But look, I think I made my feelings well known previously about us going for Luai. We get him, it's a huge signing. He is a talented half and a half that we need. But if we didn't get him, I still thought we had a good crop coming through that can take us into the future. Um, it just would take a little bit longer than we would have liked. Obviously this year we've got Sullivan to try to guide them into that. Um, Not Sullivan, sorry, Caesar. But we've got Bud as well, who's got a little bit of first grade experience to move into that as well. But look, I think with everything that's happened, I guess, with us and big name signings, nothing's ever been confirmed or nothing's ever really gotten to this point with these signings. But I'm still not counting my chickens, if I'm being honest. I still feel that something is going to happen. And I guess that's just the pessimist in me when it comes to being a Tigers fan. We have had so many chances to sign big name players since we let our big three go. And we've come up short every single time. So I think, fool me once, blame on me, fool me twice. I mean, blame on you, whatever the saying is. Don't even know it anymore. But look, a roundabout way of saying that if it happens, I'm extremely happy with it.
Okay, so the news started to get out a little bit, I think Wednesday, Thursday, that the Bulldogs had emerged as the new front runners. They were looking around a $5 million for 5 sort of deal, of what I heard. However, there was no deal put forward. I think Dean Ritchie originally reported on that in terms of the mainstream media fellows.
I don't think Ritchie's ever broke a story in his life.
No, it's a lot of recycled stuff. I think he's got his own unique sources, but I can't remember Dean Ritchie being somebody who's broken anything. Not a bad reporter, but I don't think he's well known for being a
No,
big
he's
news
unbiased,
story.
which I do like. But I don't see him as an investigative reporter. I don't see him doing that. He usually does a few opinion and fluff pieces these days.
Then come yesterday now, being this is a Saturday, and Friday afternoon we started to hear a few little whispers and bits and pieces that Jarome Luai had, if not done a deal, then decided on the Tigers, but it was only a bit of scuttlebutt. I think I'd mentioned in our private chat. I heard a couple of whispers around that yesterday afternoon, late yesterday. Lo and behold, this morning, Michael Chemis, who conversely is a big newsbreaker, I think he's got a fair few fingers in pies and gets some advanced knowledge. He broke the story. Originally, I think that Luai had signed the deal, but I think he actually backtracked and changed the subtlety of his language to is set to sign. And basically, the details of the deal are, as we mentioned before, 6 years over, 5 years, $6 million over 5 years. That equates to 1.2 a year. By all reports, it's done. Now, there's been multiple mainstream media articles, and I've seen and heard from a number of different other non-mainstream sources that it is done. And when it says done, it means he's agreed to terms. So let me just explain as best I understand to try to make it very simple the way this brand new 10-day cooling off period works. As far as I could tell, the cooling off period was one of the things that everybody hated the most about the old situation, and they got rid of it and everybody loved it. But it's back in apparently, so here we go. The way that it happens, as far as I'm aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, any of our listeners out there, but to my understanding, teams put forward their offers towards a free agent. A free agent can then make a decision. So all official offers that are put forward are put through essentially the NRL, or the NRL is at least an aware party of each offer. So the NRL would have been aware of our offer to Jerome. Jerome then indicates to us and the NRL that he intends to accept that offer. Once that is put in place, that starts the 10-day cooling off period. Now, the 10-day, unfortunately, is business days, is my understanding as well. So that's a 2-week period then. So essentially has a fortnight. Now, in that fortnight, Penrith and Penrith only have a right of refusal to be able to go back to the renegotiating table and see if they can reconvince him to come back and over. I think the idea behind that originally was there to allow teams to have, I guess, the last right of reply in losing key talent, rather than just having it constantly pilfered. The irony in this situation is it could possibly help the 3-time premiers retain a player that is headed to a struggling club. However, that's just the way that it works. However, all indications are, if Jerome's had several months to consider his offers, that most likely he will accept. He has already intended he'll accept our offer. So unless Penrith come back with some sort of outrageous changes, expect it to stay the same. It's just one of those fait accomplis. We've just got to sort of wait it out. The other outcome, possibly, other than it just lapsing and him officially signing, is that he could have cold feet and elect to withdraw his acceptance. At that point, essentially, he just goes back into free agency. So the 10-day, still haven't lubricated that chair, I see.
My bad.
The 10-day period then becomes null and void, and it just goes back to what it was before he agreed to accept the offer. So obviously a nervous wait, but something you would assume on the vast majority of signings henceforward would just go off without a hitch. Once that indication to the NRL is there, generally speaking, I think that the decision has been made, and that's why Shamus had released that article. Now, the other thing to consider is that players don't actually sign at the start of the 10-day period. So they don't sign the contract and then 10 days go by. They actually they make their intention to agree to terms. So they actually agree to terms. The NRL is aware. At the conclusion of that 10-day period, that is when they actually sign. So that's when they physically sign their name on the contract at the conclusion of that 10-day period. You will note that in following to all the releases today about him agreeing to accept the Tigers deal, which is brilliant for us, he has since hopped on social media, as he loves to, good old Romy, and he has said, quote, "No pen to paper here. I'll let yous," no comment on that one, "I'll let yous know when a deal is done. Big love." So I think he's very careful with his words there, meaning he hasn't officially signed, but he will let you know when the deal has been actually signed off on. That fits with the 10-day period because he doesn't actually sign until the conclusion of that. The indications are, you'll notice he didn't refute the fact that he's linked to the Tigers or that there's a deal there to be done. He didn't deny anything to do with the Tigers. So effectively, all that means is that we've signed Luai without him actually signing the signature. After 10 days, he'll sign his name on the dotted line. We'll get an announcement in a couple of weeks, and he will be in the side in 2025.
So let's say this start. Let's say that you've said you're 99% sure this is going through.
I'm 100% sure.
Now, there you go. Yeah. Well, I am
yesterday.
I'm still, like I said, I've been burnt. Just sort of waiting till that. But being Luai and being the person that he is in terms of bigger than life, could you see a LeBron James heading to South Beach sort of press conference?
In what way?
Like, you know how, well, we all know what LeBron did when he signed with Miami back
Mm,
then. Held a
mm.
massive press conference to say he's taking his talents. Can you see that Luai actually putting a bit of a press conference together to say that he's leaving, officially leaving the Panthers and has signed with the Tigers?
Oh no, I don't think so. No, I don't know. Maybe
I
I don't
reckon.
necessarily see that happening, but yeah. In fact, it's been reported that on Saturday morning, which is this morning, he told teammates that he'll be leaving Penrith, and he also told them that he's going to the Tigers. So I think that in some scenarios, there's going to be situations where um, certain players sign for rivals, and the 10-day period is actually a genuine continuance of negotiations with their current club, where it's touch and go, and they can be talked around. I think the situation's different. It's been a long running saga. He's had a long period of time to make his decision. He finally has. He's already notified his teammates and everything. You know, to get to that point,
Yeah,
you think you would have to make the decision. He wanted to have made his decision last week, so he's already delayed his decision at that point. The other side of the coin is it's not like it's neck and neck. It's not like money or years in the contract that Penrith can reoffer is going to sway him that much.
mm,
Plus, you know, there's still that allure of being the guy, and I think that's a big appeal in and of itself. So, you know,
yeah,
it's not a scenario, say, where what could we say? The Roosters or the Dolphins try to sign Junior Tupou, for example, and he agrees to terms with them, but then we can go back and negotiate an extra 50 grand or an extra 75 grand or something, maybe an extra mutual option where it's touch and go. I think, and you know, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's my read on it. And I don't see this as the typical type of deal that would likely see somebody like him backflip. So yeah,
and
like I said,
I think too, like,
I'll happily be wrong, and so I'll say, yeah, it's 100% done. Well, it is done. It's just
yeah,
a formality. We've got to wait.
yeah, I think, you know, again, like I said, pessimist attitude. We'll wait till the pen's on paper, but you'd like to think that he's got a few people in his ear as well from the Tigers. So Appy would having massive conversations with him, the
Yeah,
chance to work together again. You could tell the big difference between the way Luai played when Appy did leave. Luai did have a little bit more of a didn't get as freed up as he would like, and then so on. Cleary had to take charge, which was a very clear last year that Cleary probably dominated a little bit more than Luai did. Whereas Appy can kind of pick where he wants to go, and Luai follows, and then he can be a little bit more like that. So you can see that that's probably something that is swayed in our favour. I think um, he's got a couple of the Samoan boys there who are probably having a bit of a word to him as well. You know, Steph would be um, having a bit of a word to him. So it's not like he's coming to a team where he's not familiar with how people are playing. But yeah,
well,
it's
yeah.
look,
The other thing I want to mention as well, before we dive in, I guess too much as to what he's going to offer and that sort of stuff is, which we sort of have. The other concern in this period of time before there's an official announcement and there is pen to paper, so to speak, would be the Bulldogs. They've been sniffing around quite heavily, particularly of late.
I don't understand how they can afford him.
They were definitely their hat in the ring, but the Bulldogs don't have any rights to negotiate with Luai now. So the only way that the Bulldogs can come to the table now is if Luai actively withdraws his acceptance of the deal within this 10-day period. So if he does that, like I said earlier, he effectively becomes a free agent, and it's like he never accepted in the first place. And then the Bulldogs can dive back in, and so can we again if we wanted to. But that's where it appears to be. That being said, there's nothing to stop the Bulldogs having continual conversations outside of it, which might entice him to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we have to wait and see around that. It would probably be the case of the Bulldogs having to stump up 1.4 or 1.5 for him, and if it gets to that point, then so be it. But effectively, the news is Jerome Luai will be with the Tigers in 2025. So we've talked several times because we've speculated a fair bit, I guess, about what he brings. So we know that, mate. But I want to ask you a bit of a different puzzle. we can start planning for this. There'll be there might be a 1% chance it doesn't happen, but for all intents and purposes, he's going to be in our side. Does he play halfback or does he play 5'8", in your opinion?
Look, I think that he'll get first crack at halfback because that's what he wants to play. Whether he is, he's done it for Samoa. He took him to a quarterfinal, semi-final at a World Cup. Can't remember. Final.
He played Australia. They played Australia in the final.
There you go. So at halfback.
He played at halfback, yeah, because it was the first time I think that he and Cleary had played against each other since juniors.
There you go. So he showed that he can do it, and he showed that he can step on the big stage. So he'll get first crack. It's probably a bit bitter. There'll be a bit of taste in Bud's mouth because, obviously that's a jersey he wants badly. And we're both in agreement that that Ladu's probably going to be the 5'8". So, look, I think that he will be halfback. Whether he stays there is probably another story. He hasn't continuously been a halfback for a while. Shane Richardson came on in the media conference and said that he's been a fan of Luai since the younger days. Obviously tried to sign him at Souths. Thought he was better than Cleary coming through. So there's high praises on him from internally. Obviously don't know what Benji wants. Benji's been very, very good at keeping a lot of things to his chest, which I like. There's not as many leaks as there once were, and I think he's a big reason for that. But again, roundabout way. Probably start at halfback. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, he played a lot of halfback in juniors as well. I think that is he a year older than Cleary? Or a couple of years older?
I think he is.
He'll be 27 next year, yeah. How old's Cleary, though? I think Cleary's, 24? Is
25. I remember that because of that whole Mary Fowler thing was in the news every day.
Yeah, you'd be keeping up with all the celebrity gossip, mate, wouldn't you?
Oh, mate, give me Women's Weekly any day of the week. It's great.
So he played prominently halfback coming up, and so did Cleary. So, he'll be 27 mid next month.
January.
16th of January. Not far off Benji's birthday.
Not far from me.
No. He's played plenty of halfback. I agree with you. I think he'll be given the first crack. He came through as a controlling half. People forget that. Obviously, he's got a little bit more of an enigmatic nature about him. A little bit more unorthodox. A little bit of Benji about him, might I say? But he was an on-ball controlling half coming through, and we saw that what he did with Samoa. We've spoken ad nauseum before about his success rate with Penrith when he plays halfback. In a gun side, obviously, but his win ratio is significantly better without Cleary than what Cleary's is without Luai. So if nothing else, that speaks to the fact doesn't speak to the fact he's a better player. They're completely different players, obviously, and Cleary is just he's just an absolute weapon. But what it does say is that at the very least, Penrith as a side don't lose anything with him in that position. And in a superstar side like they are, that's saying something. But excuse me, I believe he's got all the skill sets, all the experience, all the leadership to be able to play halfback, and you want him there. You get to sign him for 1.2 a year. He's your marquee man. He's going to be the bloke you want, whose hands you want on the ball as much as possible. Appy obviously will touch the ball the most, but then Luai is going to be a close second. And I think that he brings, the swagger stuff is obviously a confidence thing. And from the outside looking in, it's painful to look at sometimes. But what it is a self-confidence and a self-belief that just comes from winning. And so, by default with that, we're starting to get some out-and-out competitors in that squad. I put Clemmer in that basket. Appy, obviously. Johnny Bateman. No one hates losing more than John Bateman. You bring Luai into that team, and then all of a sudden you bring these juniors through who have done nothing but win since they went undefeated in Harold Matts. So we're starting to backfill this squad with a team of winners.
Yeah.
and people with confidence and that just settle for nothing less, as opposed to plotters who just are happy to be first graders that you've said yourself for a long time. People that are just happy to say they've played NRL. So,
Yeah.
yeah, mate, the
Yeah.
tide's
And I think
turning. You go.
I was going to say, I think that before we get into that, and I just stick on Luai for 2 secs. I think another thing that he brings, and this is something that I've been vocal of for a long time. I think I've been vocal of it this whole time the podcast has been going. Is you need a halfback to have a voice. You need a halfback to be yelling at your players where you want to do, where you want them to be. You see how Hastings was last year with us. You see how he was this year with the Knights. That's how, in my eyes, that's quality, gameman, not gamemanship, not a quality, I don't know, let's just say quality half. I don't know what word I was going for there, but we'll say quality half is somebody that has a voice. Now, quality half back, I meant to say that because, obviously we haven't had that. Brooks is a very quiet player. He's a great ball runner, but he is not a game manager. That's the word I was looking for, game manager. He is not a game manager, has never really been that way. And that's why, you and I both agree this is a tangent, if anything, but he'll go well at Sea Eagles because he's not that. But that's what Luai is. Luai has that voice. Like, we all remember what happened either this year or last year. I can't remember what happened, but Jamin Salmon did something on the field that stuffed up a play. He got in Salmon's face and had a go at him. And that's the thing. They didn't sit there and they didn't, go sulk in a corner or not show up to training late or, have a calf strain on a Monday. I think we all know who I'm talking about there. Didn't have a whinge about the way that things were going. They had a go at each other. They fired up. And I think they went on to win that game because that's what he does. He says, I provide the standard. I set the standard. You don't match it. Get off the field. And I've always said that about him. He can be an arrogant prick. And he's going to, if he wears a Tigers jersey, I love him. If he doesn't wear a Tigers jersey, I'll hate him. It's just the end. That's the end of it. Because
That's the way that it works, mate.
Yeah, because he's an arrogant prick. He is so arrogant, but he's kind of earned that. There's not a lot he hasn't achieved in this game. If he wins a Dally M and a World Cup for Samoa, he will literally have achieved everything in this game.
It's why it's hard. It's why it's hard to argue with somebody who has a bit of swagger or ego or arrogance about them if they back it up with results.
Exactly.
It's hard to argue. So let me ask you something. We've spoken about it a little bit before, but 2025, Aiden Caesar, it's a straight swap. That makes that a bit easy. Who knows what happens with Dewey? He probably sails off into the sunset. Sort of rebuilding himself at this point might be hard pressed. At least of all, maybe a train and trial or a minimum wage or something, top 30 filler. But 2025, we're going to have Jerome Luai, Latu Fainu, Lockie Galvin, and Sullivan there. Do you think we can keep all of them? Do we need to keep all of them? Just really quickly, because I think this is a retouch, but it's exciting to do now, given that Luai is coming. One of them's got to play 5'8", right?
Yep.
Fainu and Galvin normally wouldn't be a concern. However, these are the two best halves in the country of their age bracket. You might put Ethan Sanders in there, but the way that these boys have just kicked on thus far, you'd say that these are the two best in the country, and we've got both of them. They're both 18. Sullivan's 21. So how do you see that sort of working out from 2025 onwards? And what's the most likely scenario?
Oh, that's a hard one, isn't it? Excuse me. Oh. To be honest, no, I don't think we'll keep them all. I would love to say that we could. I think that there is talk that Galvin could be pushed into more of a lock forward position or a back rower. It's very similar to a Wade Graham in terms of that transition. I think that with Luai coming, you're adamant, I'm not yet, but we'll see. It's fair to say that we both agree that next year it'll be Latu and Jerome getting first crack. I think that'll be very frustrating for Bud Sullivan.
You mean 2025?
Sorry, yes, 2025. Sorry, 2025. I keep thinking it's not close to the end of the year yet. Not close. It's not far from the end of the year, sorry. Yeah, for 2025, Luai and Latu will get first crack as the halves pairing. Um, and yeah, like I said, I can see like I said, there's been chatter that Galvin will start the transition to a back rower. He may be the best half for a 17-year-old, but we all know that that transition doesn't always go smoothly. Um, but I can see Bud Sullivan getting frustrated, and I can see that being he'll be the casualty, unfortunately, which sucks because I think that Sullivan could definitely be something. The only issue is if he wants to be something, he has to wait 6 years to do it. So, and he's not going to wait that long. He'll be 27. Like if he wants to be something at our club,
unless
um,
he's the 5'8".
unless he's a
So
5'8".
I think as much as I'm talking up Fainu and Galvin, and rightly so, they are 18-year-olds. So earlier this year they were children, literal children. So it is a very easy situation, I think, to put the cart before the horse. And I think we hear about these names from, it's probably my fault. We hear about these names probably way earlier than we need to, and we sometimes put the cart before the horse a little bit in regards to that. If you look at, excuse me, the fact that they are 18, and you look at when would a half begin to hit their straps or begin to enter a solid portion of their career, you would think it would probably be 22 or 23 at the absolute earliest, which is 5 years from now for those two boys. So they do have a lot of development still to go, those fellas. So it's very easy to pretend they're going to be pushed straight in. And I've one that's spoken about how I think Fayunu's pretty ready. Same way that Isaiah Katoa was this year for the Dolphins. Good enough, old enough. But I don't expect Isaiah Katoa to hit his straps for another 3 or so years at least. I think he's got a lot of development to go. And I think the same with Fayunu. What I think the Luai signing does is it actually buys us time. And so what you do say then is if Latu, for example, because I don't think Galvin is physically ready. I'm very, very confident that he's not. He's 6'4" or thereabouts already at 18 years of age, and he's built like my pinky finger. So he's certainly not playing in the middle. He won't be able to play physically in that sense. We heard Talon, who's far shorter and heavier pound for pound, talk about when he made his debut. He spoke that he was really light and he was early 80s, and he said he just got ragdolled, but he did his best. I remember Nelson running at him in his debut Talon. So I don't know that Galvin's quite ready. I'm happy to see the likes of Fayunu and Sullivan duke it out to see who is best. I'm guilty of not ruling Sullivan out because I like the possibilities of what Bud Sullivan can bring. I actually think he can be brilliant. And if he and Latu go head to head and train the house down and they play out of their skin, I don't care who it is. But remember, with Bud only being 21, he's played NRL. So we could have Sullivan and Luai there for the first couple of years even. And then we could look at Galvin or Fayunu when they're about 2021. And that's still 3 years down the track.
Yeah,
And they're still really, really young men. So what it does do is it buys us time and it brings our overhaul of our roster way forward. So we don't have to wait 3 or 4 years to have these halves. And in the meantime, hope that they're ready. We've got a ready-made solution, 3-time premiership winner, incumbent Blues 5'8", arriving in little less than 12 months. He'll be here November 1 next year, all things being equal.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very, very true. And that's definitely something I feel that I'm guilty of. You've been you've talked up Fainu for better part of probably 6 months before he signed.
Yeah.
Well, you probably talked about him. I didn't pay attention to him when you were talking about him because he wasn't on our radar. So, if you don't talk about somebody that's going to be in the West Tigers, probably zoning in and out, to be honest. But it's very easy to just think that he's just going to slot straight in when, in reality, he turned 18 like 6 months ago, if that.
Yeah.
Galvin reminds me a lot of Dewey in terms of the way he's built and his stature.
Yeah.
And so Dewey wasn't pushed in at an early age or anything like that, but you can see the run of injuries that Dewey has had because he's lanky because he's probably hasn't put enough muscle where he needs to. Yes, he has dodgy knees, but it's likely that there's some contributing factor there to the way he's physically built.
Yeah, possibly.
Again, I'm not
Also, Dewey also did play NRL at 18.
Was that when he debuted for Souths?
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I'm
didn't know
relatively
that.
certain he was 18. If he wasn't 18, he most certainly. I'll look that up, so I'm in the interest of
Yeah,
being.
yeah, yeah.
You're right. Keep talking.
Oh well, that's another thing too. Like, if you really do think about it, and you say like it brings everything forward a little bit, what it also does is it
Sorry,
doesn't throw these.
sorry. He was 19.
Yeah,
He
well,
was 19.
that's still come on. Like, if you're not
Yeah,
21 and you've made an NRL debut, you're still a kid. Come on,
yeah,
let's call a spade here. But
yeah,
what it does do is, and like I said, like I said, Fainu and Sullivan might be the the extra that gets pushed aside. But again, that wasn't taken into consideration. Everything you just pointed out. But I'll retract again. What it does do is it gives these kids a little bit more time. Doesn't throw them into the deep end. Gives them a chance to play against men. And you made a really good point. It was either last pod or the pod before of next year. You start with Caesar, you start with Sullivan, you do a whole year of Fainu playing New South Wales Cup a um, to build a partnership with De Silva. You keep
yeah.
Simpkin as your 14, and that's the way you should run. And you really think about that, like, obviously you can. Anyone who listens to this pod regularly enough knows that you're more of the strategic mind kind of a thinker. You tend to think how things are going to probably pan out in the long run and how to actively look at this. Where I potentially talk with my heart, not my head. So yeah, you're definitely thinking more of a strategic point, and that does make a lot of sense. So
Yeah, mate. I think it's really encouraging in that regard. I think we're pretty future proof now. The challenge is
it's
to
it's
hold on
crazy.
to them.
Yeah,
Yeah, the challenge is to go rightio in 2 years' time. So let's say start of 2026 or the end of 2025. Luai's arrived for his first season. We've made top four, knocked out in the prelim. Um, what?
look, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Anyway, yeah, just let me finish. I'm not there yet.
All right.
And let's say we've got those guys all on the books now. The discussion then becomes rightio. Well, what is the path forward? And I think it will be at that point that we will know who our 5/8 is, no doubt. Either it's Faunu, Sullivan, or Galvin. But it's an interesting discussion because if they're all still here and committed, obviously at that point, Fainu, Sullivan still have 2 years to run, and I think Galvin also has 2 years to run, although he might at that stage. I think he's only on a 3-year contract starting next season. So anyway, that's beside the point. But we should know at that point who our 5/8 is. Now, the point I was trying to make is, do we choose the best 5/8 or do we choose the 5/8 that is the best fit for the team? And what I mean by that is, if say Galvin is the best fit, he's slightly outplaying Bud, for example, or he's slightly outplaying Fainu, or he's a bit of a better option. However, we're a bit short in the second row at that point. Maybe Papali'i shoots back to the Warriors or something, or whatnot, and we're better playing Fainu there, so Galvin can be in the 12. Get what I'm saying? So
Oh yeah. It's the
we
same.
can be
You're
we
going
can
down
be
the
that
same
situation.
mentality that Brad Fittler had, whereas or not so much. It started off with Gus Gould with you try to fit everyone in the side as best you can, given what they're playing and how we need them to play. So that's why
Mate,
you
I
remember in
think
like
that
the
might even
early.
be back. I think that might have even been back to Jack Gibson. Don't do it again. Where
Oh
he
no,
said,
I'm going to do it again
"Yeah,
because I finished my bloody point.
well, you interrupted me."
I didn't.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I think it was even Jack Gibson that said, "You pick the best players and you find a spot for them." It might not have been
probably.
Gibson, might be someone like that, but yeah, you're
Yeah,
right. And that's what you do.
I thought it was cool, but it could have been Gibson. But that's the
Yeah,
thing, and like, great example of that is back like in the early 2000s. Kamali was the best half at that point in time, but you couldn't have left out Andrew Johns, so he played number 9.
yeah,
So
yeah. And this is my point too: is you can carry too many halves in a top 30. 5 halves is a lot to carry, and so let's say at that point, Say we don't have five, but we may do because Heath Mason, who's a development player, I think next year, sorry, he might be 25, 26. He should be up there. He's a bit of a utility back / half, but you're going to have Galvin likely, Sullivan, Luai, and Fainu, and that's notwithstanding anybody else. But if you've got versatility in those players, or you've got other ways that you can use them effectively, then it becomes value for money because not only can you fit your best players in that side, as in you don't have to trade them off to get somebody else in, by virtue of the fact that they are versatile, it means you can fit them all in. Plus, you've also got the backup at the same time. So if you've got Galvin, who is going to slide into second row once he fills out a little bit, if our 5'8" happens to go down, we've got him that can slide in. If we've got Fainu, who's played the house down and is the starting 5'8" at the age of 20, but we carry Bud at 14 because he offers that utility value. If Fainu goes down and we don't want Galvin to slide in there because he had to go out to cover for somebody in centre, we can throw Sullivan into.
Yeah.
So the versatility allows that sort of option, and that's a huge thing too. If you've got 4 or 5 Adam Reynolds in your team, that's 4 or 5 out-and-out halfbacks. There's no versatility there, but our boys that we've got here, we've even seen Fainu play hooker for Tonga. So I think that I'm not a big fan of utility players per se, but given the versatility of these players, I think that again, it's only a positive for us.
Yeah, well, just to sort of, I guess, put it down from what you just said, right now you're talking purely just from the club perspective. You also got to think from the players' perspective. They might put up with that for a year, but Bud Sullivan's been a utility before. Probably wouldn't want to go back to that again. So right now, that all sounds great in a perfect world, and that's definitely a huge advantage to the way that you can utilize those halves. But I think it has to be obviously it has to be a two-way street. They have to be on board for that, and I can't see anyone sitting there going, "Yeah, I want to be a utility." So
yeah, absolutely, I agree. But remember that out of the three, other than Luai, who's the most expendable?
Yeah,
Bud Sullivan.
Yeah,
he's also the oldest, which means that he's going to be the most impatient. So he's the most expendable. We haven't seen enough of the other two to develop yet to know they're going to be better, but good judges would say they probably will exceed his capacity. So Galvin, Fainu, hopefully, would be long-term better players. But if someone's going to get itchy feet, it's going to be the bloke who's already at that stage, 23, 24. He's also the one we're probably happiest to see leave. And if that's a situation, it'll be a bugger. But, you rewind, right? When did we sign Bud? Was that October?
No idea.
It was slightly after the end of the season, I think. Anyway, had we at that stage already signed Luai, which was impossible because it was November 1, but had we already had Luai on the books, do you think we signed Sullivan?
No.
I'm the same. And so this club did what it hasn't done with Mitchell Moses, which was they had a backup plan ready to go.
Yeah, true.
So if Luai doesn't arrive, then we roll into the next couple of years. At least next year, we've got Caesar, Sullivan, Galvin, Fainu, and possibly a broken Dewey coming back. But now we've got Luai. It's like, okay, so we've got a surplus. When was the last time we've ever had a surplus of halves? Never.
I don't think there's a club at the moment that does have a surplus of halves.
No.
Maybe
the benefit,
Penrith because they just keep pushing people up to do the job.
Yeah.
But
yeah. The one thing I did want to mention as well is a couple of people have balked at the price a little bit and said, 1.2, is he worth 1.2? Look, if you're going to put a nominal value in terms of what we've seen, forget the CV, forget the resume, just simply the sniff test. Like when you watch Jerome Luai play, is he worth 1.2? Probably not.
No.
Probably not. 900 to a million maybe. But then if you add in all the experience that he's had and the accomplishments he's had in a team sport, mind you, but we'll go through it. It's redundant. We know this, but he's 3-time premiership winner player. He took Samoa at halfback to their first ever World Cup final, and he's the incumbent New South Wales Blues 5'8", right?
You say 3-time premiership winner, yeah, but it's 4 straight grand finals he played in as well.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. has held his own playing as the sole playmaker. But then I want you to go back and have a look and say that everything's relative, right? So in 2029, which will be, correct me if I'm wrong, that'll be the final year of his contract. Is that right? 25, 6, 7, 8, 9, right?
Yeah.
So 2029, we're going to be paying him $100,000 more than what we paid Brooks last year.
Yeah.
So last year, or this year, 2023, in 6 years' time, we're still going to be paying our halfback only 100,000 more. Mind you, the salary cap would have gone up way more than that, way more. And then we compare what the two of them offer to the side.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
tell me that that's not good value. We had an offer for over $1 million for a prop. The Titans are paying 1.2 for a prop. By
And like
all likelihood, the
1.1 for a
Dragons.
back rower.
Yeah, exactly. Manly are paying that for a back rower. You've got, by all rights, St George are going to pay over $1 million for Adam Fanua-Blake, who, by the time 2025 rolls around, is going to be past 30.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't have a problem with it. And you look as well at the difference. What is the difference between? Sorry, if the difference between getting him or not getting him is what 50 or 100K a year, do you really want to lose an opportunity to sign who is probably the biggest signing in the club's history over 100K a year? Well, no, you don't.
No. But I think that another thing too is like you look, like you said, you look at it at face value, the way that he plays and things like that. Would you say 1.2? Does he do the things that Kalen Ponga does, who now earns 1.4 in terms of game breaks? No, not at all. But what has Kalen Ponga achieved? He was part of, yes, he's won a couple of State of Origin series, but there was a couple of times there where he was probably better suited not playing in the Origin. He was a little bit of a hindrance. He can break a game wide open. No two ways about that. But is he worth $1.4 million based on what he's achieved? No, not in any way. Like, if you sat there and you just, like, again, it's comparing Luai, if we compare, like, Luai to Ponga, CV, that's all we're comparing. And you had 1.2 on the table for either, you go with Luai every day of the week because of everything's accomplished. But then you look at them as they play and you go, I don't know, like, maybe, you could add that. But he hasn't achieved anything, and he's been on 1.4 for 2 years now, and no one's kicking up a stink about that. And that's the thing that I don't completely understand. I've never really understood why people aren't more upset, especially Knights fans, about that stuff. So
I agree about the nominal value of his contract, but I'll tell you why somebody like that doesn't get challenged as often is I believe that it's game breaking money. So somebody can be paid based upon their ability to blow a game wide open, even if it's inconsistent. Latrell Mitchell's a prime example. If somebody offered Latrell Mitchell or Joey Manu maybe for another one, Tedesco at his peak, if somebody's paying them, say even up to $1.5 million a year, if they are intermittently blowing games wide open and dominating, people go, he's worth every penny. And that carries goodwill for several months until they do it again. Whereas Luai's a different type of signing in that he's going to be chief playmaker. So he's more of a comparison to a Cherry Evans or whatnot, where you might not get the game-breaking ability, but you're going to hopefully get consistent control. He's going to be the bloke running the side. He's going to have far more of a say in the results of the side than, say, a Latrell or an Inglis back in the day or a Kalen Ponga, to your point, right? So that's where people start to. I think that's the reason why people don't analyse it as much, because they don't see Luai scoring 4 tries a game and beating 74 defenders like Benji did back in the day. So I think that the money value, people start to go, oh, yeah, but has he ever sort of taken a game by the scruff of the neck, or has he ever single-handedly swung a game? Well, he might have done it on occasion. He might not have done a fancy goose step to do it. He might not have thrown a brilliant cutout pass. But he also might have got his team home 13 times in the last 3 seasons that they wouldn't have otherwise in tight contests by his game manipulation. And so that's where the value comes from, right? So, look, I don't know. You must agree. But, yeah, mate, the dollar value to me is on par for top-line halves. And it goes without saying, CV alone, he's a top line half, and we've got him.
100%. When they said, when the report came out for 6 million over 5 years, I didn't balk at that one bit. I was like, makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
It's
but yeah,
pretty apparent. It's pretty apparent, though, isn't it, that we heard rumblings about the Bulldogs and a 5-year deal, and all we heard was four and a half
oh
for
yeah,
4.
oh there
Five
was
and a half
no
for
two
4.
ways that wasn't his manager.
Yeah.
No two ways that the manager didn't put that out.
And once I saw today that it was 5 years for 6, I was like, oh, this is definitely done. He's come back to us and gone, if you can do the extra year, he'll sign. We've given the extra year, so he's committed.
Yeah,
So that alone, outside of everything else, just gives me all the confidence in the world that the 10-day will come and go. It doesn't mean we won't be anxious. And I actually think that that's going to carry over the Christmas period, which it will. So we might not actually get a formal announcement until the new year. But anyway, we can hope that they waive the period after a couple of days and we get maybe you get a
yeah.
Christmas.
I think this week was the last week of preseason training before Christmas.
Was it? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
So I think they're done for the year, and then I
Yeah.
think they come back second week in the new year.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So
Yeah, well, in some ways, folks, don't expect an announcement maybe before 2024 in January. So
yeah,
we don't be at all surprised if that's the case, but expect plenty of concern and speculation in the meantime, though.
100%. It's funny that we've spent over 45 minutes talking about one player, but there's still actually been so much that's happened at the Tigers in the last week. Not
Good
just
segue.
this.
We better move on to it. I thought this was a half an hour Christmas. Hey, I'm glad we waited. Now, the other two podcasts that we recommend all the time, they did their board dismissal show, and I thought I'm just going to sit on it for a couple of days. I know maybe I just had a feeling, but as soon as that news came through today, I thought, oh, we have to now.
Oh
We have
yeah,
to do it with the combination. So, mate, let's move off Jerome Luai, so to speak, figuratively. I'm very excited about that. Let's move to something else that, yes, I guess you would say excited. I didn't cry for joy when it happened. I wasn't deliberately hanging with bated breath, hoping that they get all crucified. But you've been living under a rock as well. I've already said that phrase once again, or you haven't been following our Facebook page, then you would not be aware, but everybody else would, that the entire board has been completely dismissed as of Monday,
Tuesday.
earlier this week. Tuesday, of course it was Tuesday. And Justin Pascoe quietly slipped out the back door with a resignation as well. So the entire administrative structure above the football department has been completely wiped. In their place, we have an interim 4-person board. One of them is still yet to be announced, but Barry O'Farrell, former chairman, who in 2019 was the chairman of the Tigers, and then moved on to another role. But he's a former New South Wales Premier, obviously. He's back there for an interim position for 6 months to start. And then Shane Richardson of Penrith and South CEO fame has stepped into an interim role for 6 months as CEO as well. Obviously, both those positions will be reassessed at that point. Lee Hadjipentelis, gone skis. Justin Pascoe, gone. All the rest of the kooks on that West Tigers board that have just done absolutely nothing, some of which are also on the Holman Barnes Group board, gone as well. Before we dive into this, I just want to give a gigantic shout out. Now, we did this on the Ambush page, which is connected to the West Tigers podcast that we plug all the time. I want to give a big, massive shout out to all the folks over there at West Tigers podcast. Personally, I'm going to leave some out here. Joel, Steve, Eddie, Gary, Declan, and Kelly. I think I got them all. Those folks over there started this petition that got over 2,000 signatures. It then triggered, obviously, the review. They took it to Holman Barnes. They've gone through the process. And this has been, obviously, the outcome. But I just wanted to say that gigantic credit to those folks for getting the ball rolling. This does not happen without that. I've been blown away by the impact that it has had, and I'm sure they have as well. But I think it goes without saying that the vast, if not entirety of the fan base is happy with this outcome, to put it lightly, mate. Am I on the right track there?
Oh, I think you've hit the nail on the head, mate. I think there's, there was obviously whispers. Again, there's always whispers that something big was going to happen at the start of this week. the review was going to come out. How much impact that was going to have was obviously up for debate. But yeah, to have them do a full clean sweep was not something I saw happening. And like you, wasn't holding my breath for it, wasn't, praying to the gods for it or anything like that. But it's nice to finally see the club show some balls and make a decision based from an external source, not the infamous internal investigation they did in the start of 2024 to 2022. The one that was done by them in terms of Pasco and all that stuff. So
They just found the scapegoat, and Hardigan was given the flick. He was the scapegoat.
Exactly. And look, the pieces have fallen where they may. Chips have fallen where they may, so to speak. Like you said, Lee's gone, chucked a hissy fit when he walked out the door, threw all of his toys out of the cot, which was hilarious. For somebody that is the face of such a successful law firm to act like that, it's pretty embarrassing for him. It should be.
Mate, I've actually I've been a relatively long time supporter of Lee, in spite of criticisms against him and the sorts of things that he said. I've actually not been from the same camp so much, and I think testament to that is the fact that I believe he has genuine passion for the club, and he's invested a shitload of money into the club, and I believe that he wanted the best. But to your point, the way that, how do I phrase this? The attitude that he showed upon being given his marching orders and the types of sound bites that he provided willingly are so bereft of any sort of understanding about public image or PR or how to handle himself or how it might come across or anything like that. It's almost baffling. Like you said, somebody who is a principal, which means a heavy stakeholder, part owner in a company as big as Bryden's Lawyers, a lawyer himself, somebody who knows his way around a sentence. I could pull up some of the quotes that he said, but you can find them everywhere. They were ubiquitous because, as he likes to do, he likes to talk to a lot of people. The way he left and the complete lack of grace and lack of humility or dignity or self-accountability that he left with as he left out the door actually took me a little bit by surprise. I would have thought he would have had the wherewithal to actually hold his tongue a little bit in that scenario.
100%.
And so it actually amalgamated with me what the correct decision was and how they got this so right. And I am so happy for him now to be out. And I now understand what everybody has been saying for the last 2 years. And don't get me wrong, it's not ignorance. I've seen and read and heard everything that everybody else has. I just had a bit of a different take, but I'm with everyone on this. Having him out of the club has been a tremendous decision, along with the rest of the board who were rusted on and did not provide direction. And look, Pasco tried to do what he tried his best, but he was the wrong man for the job. Somebody worded it. I can't remember where I read it or heard it. Somebody worded it, and I think it's got some merit. They said where there are CEOs or there are bosses that work when things are going shit to bring their side or bring a company back up to where it's supposed to be. And then there are people that come in and take it from there up to the upper echelon. And I think that he brought us out of the complete bankruptcy doldrums to a degree, not strictly from a financial point of view, but let's not forget the fact this bloke did basically hand us a centre of excellence, the best in Australia, on a silver platter. That is his legacy, so he should be credited for that. But he'd obviously reached the limit in terms of what he could do, and he was floundering a little bit. So, to use your words, long story short, mate, very happy with the outcome, and seeing the way that Lee in particular exited made me even happier with the outcome. And then when I found out who the replacement CEO is,
you said before that Luai might have been one of the biggest signings in this club's history in terms of the merger club. I go one better and say Shane Richardson is probably better by far. When I heard that news, I shared it with you Obviously, you already knew, but I made light of it in our chat that Shane Richardson says rumblings of that, and you're like, yeah, I heard that a couple of days ago as well. I
Mm.
said if that happens, that is absolutely huge. That is
Mm.
just ridiculous. What we
And
how
we'll tell everybody why though. So he started up in Brisbane East. He came down to Cronulla with John Lang,
Yep.
and they turned Cronulla around the
Took
Super
them to the
League era.
1997 Super League Grand Final.
Yep, yep. They turned Cronulla around from a broke franchise or a broke club at that point. He then went to Penrith in '02, I think, to '04, where they won
Yep.
the 2003 premiership. He then
Yep.
went to Souths, who were broke, coming off the back of two wooden spoons, and saw them through to their. He was there for a while, I think 10 or 12 years, and saw them
I
through to their.
think he left just after he sacked Madge. So
Yeah,
2018 maybe.
yeah, well, yeah, something like that, and saw them to their first premiership in 40 something years or whatever it was. He's gone. Not only has he tasted success, but he is Hull is the other one who were facing relegation, and he brought them back
Okay,
up
didn't know
to
that.
a powerhouse in the English Super League. So he's done it
Four
four times
times.
where he's taken a struggling club and brought them back up to be highly successful. And he's the guy. You talk to anybody, you hear any journalist, you hear any talking head talk about Shane Richardson. Richo, he is one of the best administrators in the league. It's pipe dream stuff. This
Yeah,
week we've landed Richo as a CEO, and I'm a strong believer he'll stay on.
I
And
think
we've
he'll stay
landed
out to 6 months.
we've landed Jerome Luai within the space of
I think there's a big thing too
4 days.
that can't be underestimated is also the appointment of Barry O'Farrell. I think that's huge as well. When he first came on board, I think it was 2019? I thought it was 2017, but I could be wrong.
2019, he was there 2019.
2019. Then he left, I think, for New South Wales Racing. I think he had more of a commitment with them.
He also he had some sort of consultancy international job with someone I can't remember, but yeah.
But let's we all talk about the God Vlandis for taking us through the COVID period and not shutting us down or anything like that. Pretty certain Barry O'Farrell did the exact same thing for New South Wales horse racing. So that can't be underestimated how important his appointment is as well. I think, like you said, this week has been somewhat of a pipe dream achieved because one, it was the thing too at the moment is, and I think it's probably the smartest decision we've made in a very long time. From what my understandings are, it is a four-man board now with obviously Barry O'Farrell leading it up. There's one from the Holmes Group. I think that is it Holmes Group. I can't remember. Holmes
Holman
and
Barnes.
Barnes. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one from Wests. There's one from Balmain. There is no one that is overshadowing anyone else. Remember, back when we first merged in like early 2000s, I think the board was made up of potentially, and I could be completely wrong with these figures, but Balmain obviously had the majority of the money back then. West was going broke. I think it was something like 5 Balmain, 2 Wests. And then at some point it sort of flipped and went to like 5 West, 2 Balmain because we went broke because they wouldn't rebuild the leagues club. To have that sort of nullified now and gone just means that there's not going to be, we're the Western Magpies, we're the Balmain Tigers, let's go at each other. It's going to be we're the West Tigers. That's what we are.
Yeah.
No need to go back to the past or anything like that. That's what we are.
It's important to remember though that this is only temporary. So the four-person board
No,
is
I
only
know, but I think that this is going to be
situation.
A roadmap for success. I think
Yeah.
temporary is the board, temporary is O'Farrell,
No, sorry,
temporary.
no. I mean the four-person board is only temporary. They're going to reinstall a 7-person board at the conclusion of this interim period. So there will be 7 board members once again.
I heard that is still up for discussion, but I could be wrong.
Oh, it might be, but that's what I read is the current plan, but that might change. I don't know. But yeah. I agree with your point, and I think it just comes back to governance, right? It's like if you have good governance in place, if you have good administration in place, everything else falls into place.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Shane Richardson, Richo. I'm just going to go with Richo. Everything about that bloke just fills you with confidence. The way he speaks,
100%.
he's forthright, he's honest. blunt is not the right word, but he's direct. You can tell that
Yeah.
he gets what he wants. He pulls no punches. He's, so, and he carries weight. He carries weight in discussions. It's no coincidence in my mind that Wednesday morning was his press conference, where he basically said, like you mentioned earlier, that he's always been a fan of Luai, and he made no secrets of the fact he tried to get him to Souths and believed he was the best young half coming through in the junior days. Then 3 days later, we hear that he's accepted
No, I don't
our
think there's
offer.
any coincidence whatsoever.
And I've actually since read that Richardson met with Luai's management the very next day on Thursday, and basically has basically just worked his magic and got him over the line. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
I think.
he hasn't even
Look,
started in the job. He's not due to start too early next year, but you can tell this is the sort of bloke that is exactly what the Tigers have needed for a long period of time. And he's
well,
also the sort of
someone came out and said this catalyst. They can see it very, very similar to the catalyst of when Tim Sheens first came on board in 03. Tim Sheens was what we needed back then. Obviously, Tim Sheens was not what we needed now. But back then, Tim Sheens and his way of doing things, and I guess, the way that he focused highly on, young guns coming through with solid halves pairing and all this jazz. That's what we needed then. It's the same sort of catalyst with Shane Richardson now. You just said there. This is exactly what the Tigers have been calling for well over a decade. Well over a decade. And it's super, like, every Tigers fan, and I can guarantee you I am speaking for every single Tigers fan out there, we go into every season with a bit of optimism. Always. We're like, there's something's changing, the tide's turning. And for the last 10, 11 years, we've been severely disappointed, especially the last two. But that optimism is a little bit higher now that he's on board. So much so that I am very much willing to put a lot of money on the fact that while we might not make the top 8, we won't be in the bottom 4 again. That's how confident I am. I said we're going to finish 9th. We're going to be back to where we should be overall. Finish 9th, because we're going to finish there, I think, in the first week anyway.
Here we are, barring some unforeseen circumstances. So very quickly, mate, let's go through a possible 2025 lineup. Tell me what we still then need, because obviously squads are forever changing and evolving.
There is one more thing that obviously you've sort of skipped on. I did mention it before. Obviously, there's the drama going on with Noffa, because obviously we're not going to do another pod till the new year. So I got a little bit more. So there's the drama going on with Noffa. Do you see him playing for the Tigers again?
No.
No, he's gone?
I don't have any mail on it, but I could see him still being around come the start of the season, but I don't think he's going to get first pick. We've got Tupou there who is going to be given a crack at centres. I've also heard Staines will be one wing. And I've actually heard that Alex Lobb is absolutely setting the world on fire in training. So, I think they're just going to continue to fight tooth and nail to get rid of him. And I think, if nothing else, Richo will do a deal to flog him off somewhere. He's done as far as I'm concerned.
And then we signed, I'm not going to, Solomon, can't remember his full name.
Alamalo.
There you go, you do it for me. Obviously came over from Super Rugby. The one thing is, I actually haven't seen how long that deal is. Is it 2 years?
I think it might be 2 years. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it might be.
He's obviously
dragging somebody over for a code change and to move to another country. It's a bit hard to do that with a 12-month or a training trial. So I think they had to sort of, I'm making assumptions, that they would have had to sort of give some sort of carrot there for him to change, because he was playing Tier 1, which is one beneath Super Rugby, but he is returning from a big layoff with injuries and mental health issues. So prior to that, he's played 60 Super Rugby games.
He was on the cusp of the All Blacks.
In a wing, in the centres, and fullback for the Chiefs and the Highlanders, I think. Is that right?
Yeah. I think, yes. I'm pretty certain they're the two.
Played a fair few games for the Chiefs, who are a powerhouse of the best rugby nation in the world.
Yep.
This bloke's no mug. And so it would be very interesting to see how he makes that transition.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, that's an interesting one in itself, because all that drama that's been coming from, Noffa spitting the dummy with the signing of that, it's pretty timely. So
Yeah. And depending on how he goes and how he trains, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we just fall off Olam all completely now. I have heard that it's still in the background. Discussions are still happy to be had, but it was definitely on the back burner with the Luai situation. But with Alomalo now signing on, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he fills a spot at centre or
yeah,
wing,
hundred
or at the
percent.
very least, it's definitely an option at centre or wing.
Well, at 197 centimeters and like 96 kilos, yeah, definitely take him.
Yeah, and an athlete too. So,
Yeah. All right.
uh,
Go back into segue back to 2025. Did you say?
yeah, mate, 2025, just very, very quickly, because we do have to wrap up. We've got a habit of running over an hour. What are we, an hour and five? How good. Mate, there is going to be a lot of changes, but I just want to go through our way too early projected squad for 2025, and then what gaps, if anything, we've got then 12 months to try to fill. So, fullback is Buller,
Yep.
one wing, Staines.
Yep.
Who are your centres in 2025?
Well, I had Tupou as one because you and I both agree that, and we've said it time and time again. He's definitely a very good centre. He's a good winger, but I think he's a better centre. Now, I had Naden coming back into it, but I've had a bit of a rethink, and I reckon
Remember,
Dewey.
2025, not 2024.
No, Dewey.
Yep.
I think Dewey's our other centre.
Okay.
And then Lob is our other winger. What about yourself?
I think Dewey's going to be gone. I think he's proven he can't tackle in the centres. So not Dewey for me. I think Toe is still around. I think Toe is probably still picked. And then the other side, it's hard to say. As much as they're going to give Tupou a look at centres, I don't know if he's suited at centres. It'd be interesting to see. But there's a Falidi, there's a Naden who's signed. Then still there's a Tupou. And there's Alomalo as well there as options.
Yeah,
God.
but we're not giving lists. We're giving more. Who do you think is going to be there?
I know this. I'm just saying this is the tricky one. So I'm going to say Tupou and Alomalo. Actually, I'm going to leave Toa out, and I'm going to say that the other winger is either Lob or Luke Leolali'i, Kit's younger brother.
Yeah, you talked about him in the past. I haven't seen enough of him to. But remember, this is 2025, and this is It's Kit's younger brother, isn't it?
He is, yeah. So he'll still be young. He'll still be, I think, 19 that year. But he's similar to Kit. He's developed pretty early. So, yeah. He's in the Brian mould. All right.
Yep.
5'8". So 5'8" is going to be...
Fainu.
Yep, Fainu. And obviously Luai is going to be the halfback. That's exciting to say. Have you still got Dave Clemmer up front at 8?
Nope. I've got him on the bench.
Okay.
I've got Pole as starting prop and him on the bench.
Okay.
But
I don't mind.
I think that Clemmer has done absolutely nothing wrong. You and I both have sung his praises a fair bit this year of how much work he's put in. I just think by that point he'll be 30. I think Pole will definitely have hit his straps. I think Clemmer can be very much what a JWH is now for the Roosters, just come on and add that little bit of impact that's needed.
Yep, I'm happy with that. Do you run a risk then, though, because 12 signed long-term too?
Yeah.
Obviously. Do you run the risk of having 2 high-motor, average impact props on the bench then, though?
No, I don't think so.
Clemmer and Twal on the bench both offer enough?
I think so. I think, yes, Twal does have that high motor, but he also can just tighten up that middle and defensively when we need him in the back end of each halves. And that's definitely something like you want somebody to come in to have that impact. And I think that, can't sit there and say this is how it's going to be, but obviously you bring one forward off to bring another forward in to tighten up the middle. Then when that other forward comes back on, who is a bit more of a high impact, like a Pole, comes through the middle hard, pushes through, bends the line, things like that. But yeah, I think that for me, that's my 2 props on the bench is Clemmer and 12.
Okay. I'm going to say that the starting props are still the same in 2025, Clemmer and Utoy Kamanu, mainly because Pole will only be 22, 23 at that point, 22, I think. And so he's still very young. And I think 2025 will be the year he starts to get bigger minutes. And I think that he will be looking to transition 2026. So maybe a year or so later. And I also want to keep that up tempo. I want to play that big power impact game off the bench. And when you hear my bench, you'll know why. So yeah, that's what I'm going with basically. So Steph and Clemmer, Appy is the hooker.
Yep.
Your second rowers,
I've got Solomon Fainu, Solomona
Sam Weller.
Fainu, Samuela,
Yep.
sorry, Samuela Fainu, and Bateman. Because in my
Yep.
eyes, I think Papali'i's gone. I think he's
Yep.
gone sick of it and left. He didn't
I
do
agree.
enough for me. He didn't do enough for me anyway this year, but that's not all his fault. He was in a struggling club that couldn't give him quality ball when he needed it or anything like that. But I think we'll part ways mutually. I think it'll be accepted on both parts. So back into next year. So yeah, I've got Fainu and Bateman as my back rows. Okay. 1 second, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. That was my daughter coming in, not realising. She doesn't think I do it on Saturdays. She's usually in bed by the time we do it on Tuesdays. So as soon as she realised she came in, she's like, oh, my bad.
Yeah, that's all right. I was actually going to say the same thing. I agree. I actually think we use Papali'i. I think he's very replaceable, and I think Sam Weller is going to come in as an option, although he's a possible option for prop as well, and I like that versatility in him. But I think Sam Weller and Bateman can play in that position. The only change I would make to that is if we still don't have a lock established, and I'm still not sold on Matamua, and I still think the likes of Kit and Fa'agutu are more middles or possibly an edge. So I actually don't mind.
Yeah, I've got Matamua as my lock.
Yeah, so I actually don't have a drama with the possibility of Bateman shifting to lock if it's played properly with Sam Weller and Papali'i on the edges. If that's not the case, I think, to your point, we actually look to trade Papali'i and get value. And I think we try to get value out of a centre.
Yeah.
Because I'm putting the cart before the horse. I was going to say, at the end of naming this 17, where are our shortcomings? I think it's still centre. I think we use Papali'i to try to get the best centre we can out of New Zealand, for example, or Parramatta. We look at those two clubs, we go, who's their best centre? Is it a Penasini or is it someone like that? And we try to work a trade there. So, yeah, they're the options. If that's not the case, then I'm running with. So if he is just gone, sorry. So I'm running with Sam like you. So Sam Fainu, I think he's going to really come on and really come into his own, and then Bateman as the other second rower, and then my lock is going to be probably someone like a Laulii, more of a traditional middle. So a Kit Laulii, but possibly a Matamua to your point. But then we'll move on to the bench and the 2025.
TDS.
Yeah, okay. So he's going to be playing bench at that point.
Yeah.
I think to start 2025, I think TDS, who will still only be
20
at the very start, 19, pushing 20, I think he can still be playing Reggie's at that point. He'll be playing some first grade, but I think for me, I'm going to carry Bud there at 14. I think there's a bit more versatility that he offers. I think he can play in the halves. He can probably play fullback, and he's definitely going to be able to play dummy half too. So for 2025 for the start, it's Bud for me. But then I'm looking impact on my bench. Your bench, you've got Clemmer, Twal, TDS.
And Lowley. I got Kid on there.
Okay.
So that's my bench, yeah. TDS, Twal, Clemmer, Lowley.
I'm definitely going to forget someone. I've got Bud at 14. I've got Kit at 15 if he's not playing in that lock position, depending on what's happening. I've got Chris Fa'agutu off the bench, and then I've got 12 there as well.
But do you think has Fa'agutu even played New South Wales Cup yet?
Yep, he played Queensland Cup when he was still at school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look,
so
I'm happy either way, but that's.
Yeah. And he played New South Wales Cup last year.
There you go.
So centres, mate, we're still short in centres.
We are.
Yeah.
But look, one comes on the market. I think we've still got some money in that war chest.
No, I think so too.
I think there's. I don't see any quality centers coming through this year that we can probably start for 2024. But I
Mm.
think there's a few. Like, give me 2 secs. I'll just bring it up. Contract 2024. So who have we got that we can potentially get? 2024 position. So we've got in the centres, Kotrick. No. Why is it? Oh, it's not giving me everything, but I can sort of. You got Jordan Pereira. No. Why?
No, I don't. I don't think we're going to pick someone off the shopping list for who's available. I don't think that's going to be the best option for us. I think we're going to have to use a bit of trade bait if we can.
Reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's our
Look,
best option.
there's a few that's still off contract. That'll be off contract that we could go after, but none that's sort of like there's a Katoni Staggs, but he'll never leave Brisbane really. But
Well,
everyone else is kind of subpar. There's no real standout centres anymore.
hmm. You know what I would offer? I would have a look at a couple of gun wingers to see if they're interested in a center position to get a little bit further in, to get their hands on the ball a little bit more. Someone who
Yeah,
springs to mind is like a Selwyn Cobbo as
yeah,
well. Okay, Katoni Staggs is another one I'd think about because they've got Dean Mariner who's just come in, and they always seem to be flush with outside backs. And Katoni Staggs comes from Dubbo, so he's a New South Wales boy originally.
yeah.
Okay, so I think there are some options around that. Like I mentioned before, we could offer Papali'i up for like a Penasini or something. And another mob that often have good outside backs are the Warriors, and they've just had hard to yes play centre sport. So they've just I think a nice aeroplane there. So they've just filled a
Oh, that would be Thunder.
oh wow, okay. We've got a few here too. So we've just the New Zealand Warriors have also just locked down one of their centre spots as well. So there's going to be a bit of a log jam there. So maybe we look at something like that. But let's not get too far into those waters because we're already an hour and 20 in and we've only spoken about, what, two
Two
people,
things.
Richo and Luai.
Look, there were two people that needed to be talked about.
Mate, anything else you want to mention before we sail off in the sunset?
Nah, I think that was a good way to wrap up 2023. I think this is our third wrap up podcast, which is funny. But this is definitely the last one because we're both on our Christmas break next week. So that's it, and this will definitely be the last one before we come back refreshed and ready in 2024.
Last thing I'll throw to you. Do you think there's going to be any twists in the Luai saga?
Oh God, probably. It is us. It is us and us going after a marquee player. Probably. Don't know what it is. Can't predict what it is, but probably.
Okay. Do you think he gets pushed and comes this year or next year?
For Papali'i, yeah. They need back rollers, don't they?
Hey, that's it. I've heard one or two possible whispers, but anyway, we're going to leave it there, mate. I'm going to throw a few PSAs out there for the world. We've already given a nice little plug to the West Tigers podcast. Everybody, all our listeners know how much we respect those blokes over there. So get over and follow the West Tigers podcast, particularly in light of what they've done with the petition.
Yeah.
Once more, well done to that entire I was going to say organisation, but that mob over there. They should be very, very, very proud of themselves. I know that we're grateful for them. Westlife is obviously the other mob that we say give them a good follow. They do good stuff too. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook. We've been nice and active over the current Christmas holiday period so far, and hopefully long may that continue. We've got a bit more time up our sleeves, so our socials are blowing up, especially with all this news. Get over, give us a like and a follow if you are able to. Mate, big news this week. Couple of big stories. It's Christmas has all come at once. I got to put my Santa hat back on.
What my
Mate,
Christmas?
this is it. This is finally it for 2023.
Yep.
So Merry Christmas to you, sir. Thanks for another lovely
Merry
year.
Christmas. Happy New Year.
Absolutely. And thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. We've had an absolutely glorious year. It's been spectacular. What a way to finish. And look, hey, The hope monster has got us again.
Yeah. That bastard.
Got us in a chokehold every year, hey? You put
That
your house on
bastard.
it. Mate, I think the only thing left to do for 2023 is say, I love Jerome Luai and go the West Tigers.
I love Richo. Go the West Tigers.